Welcome. This is Ciao Falmouth, the first of 4 installments this year. I'm Pat DePillo, the World Language Department Chair for the Falmouth Public Schools, grades 7 through 12. And this is it's not a video vlog, it's a video newsletter that I've decided to put together because I think the district and the community would like to know what types of activities teachers and students and myself are involved in. And as you know, this program is all about everything and anything that applies to the study of a world language. So to begin with, I'd like to go all the way back to April of 2018. Later on, you're going to hear more and more that I will say teachers and students are involved in proficiency. So in April, 4 world language teachers from the Lawrence School were involved in a workshop in Wayland, at Wayland High School, called the Creative Language Classroom. There are 2 women who have spearheaded this movement. They are former world language teachers and had what they called Gen Ed certifications. That means they were deemed generalists or non-specific. So they had to teach Spanish, and they came up with this methodology that nowadays we always recognize as proficiency. But it amazed me when I asked them that they just automatically thought that this was the right way to teach. And they have now a website called Adios Textbook, and teachers in this district have subscriptions to Creative Classroom, and monthly they receive instruction on units and things to teach with rubrics attached, activities, tasks that are very modern and very authentic, and that's what we try to portray to our students, that we use authentic resources, we put them in authentic situations, because the use of the target language to communicate or interact for proficiency is exactly that. It's not learned, it's not memorized, it's exactly on the spot use of the language. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't learn the language and don't use vocabulary and apply grammar and structure, accents, but it's not the focus. That is subservient to what students can do with the language. And what students can do with the language, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, is in their use of the language to communicate, their ability to read and comprehend, and their ability to do presentational writing, or presentational can also, that mode can also indicate speaking. So that kicked off a series of professional development events that the next version was my attendance at MAFLA's Proficiency Academy in Westfield during the month of July. Now, this is my 4th year in attendance. I began in the novice strand, and I have now graduated to the intermediate strand. And in the novice strand, you learn the basics of proficiency, what it looks like, how to, develop a backward planning, understanding by design, what a benchmark is, what lesson planning looks like, all kinds of things. So in the intermediate, it really focuses in much more on assessment and grammar as a concept, and how to introduce vocabulary that is not traditional. Non-traditional, meaning we're in a transformation in the instructional practices that we use. The language teachers at Lawrence were in attendance in July of 2017, but this summer I was there solo, but I bring back lots of materials and disseminate them throughout the year for teachers to use and incorporate into their instruction. The next PD was attended by myself again, and that is the MAFLA's Immersion Weekend at LaSalle College in Newton, and Susan Schmidt from the FHS World Language Department, who teaches French and is responsible for the French exchange, was also in attendance. Immersion Weekend means that Friday, Saturday, and a portion of Sunday is devoted to French, Spanish, and Latin use of the target language specifically. So as a Latin teacher, I participated in the Latin strand, and Sherwin Little from, I believe he's from Indiana or Ohio, current president of the CLC, is the main presenter, and he reviews methods for teaching Latin, which are interpretive naturally, that is the basis of the Latin language, and talks about the Alira, which is the actful Latin interpretive reading assessment. That's the proficiency testing that we give students, our seniors, in May or June or April, whenever we give that. We have our award ceremony in May, and it is on that basis, coupled with MCAS, that students receive the seal of biliteracy, and which I will talk about in a little while. So Susan can talk more about the French strand that she was in, and I'm sure she's using that in her French classes. She has levels 2, 4, and 5 AP. That brings us to All Cape Day on October 5th. Now, I work with the collaborative to provide the presenters for that day. And this year, I was very surprised that they chose 2 speakers. Kathy Turner, who is current president of MAFLA, and she did a session for 13 teachers on communicative strategies. Again, Kara Parker and Megan Smith from Creative Classroom hosted 23 teachers from Cape Cod and the islands. And this time, the basis for their discussion was authentic resources, how to use authentic resources in the classroom. So we learned a lot of tips and strategies and lots of websites and things to use to present different thematic units to students in our district, and other districts, as I said, were there also and participated. Just recently, and I say we, 4 teachers from the junior high and I attended MAFLA's fall conference in Springfield, Massachusetts. Language teachers at Lawrence attended Greg Duncan's session on, I believe he probably incorporated vocabulary, how to acquire vocabulary, into his presentation, but they came away with knowledge of how to construct an integrated performance assessment. That is the basis of our portfolio collections this year that we have begun. And again, I will talk about that in a little bit. But they seem to feel like that was the best way for them to learn how to put those 3 modes, interpretive, presentational, and interpersonal, together as a thematic way to assess students. Now, all of this work that we do in proficiency is very integrated and very complex. It takes a lot of time, and it takes teachers time to put it together, to give the assessments, to grade the assessments. But as I go in and out of classrooms here at Lawrence, I see the value and the results of their work, because I see students meeting those challenges and working harder to meet teacher expectations in this area. And all of that is going to culminate in increased proficiency for students in the classroom. I personally am putting together a data report based on 3 years of our giving the stamp, which is the standard assessment for the measurement of proficiency in French and Spanish, and the ALERA, which I've explained in Latin, so that we can look at our proficiency benchmarks and our goals. We set them every year, and we base our term grades on them. We look at our grading, how we grade, what weighting we give it, how much weight we should give them. And so we know that our seniors are meeting their target benchmarks and leave at the award ceremony and graduation with the silver seal for meeting intermediate mid, the gold seal for meeting intermediate high, and the platinum seal for meeting advanced low. But we know we need to work on grade 8 that achieves the certificate of attainment, and grade 10 who at the supposedly end of exit, and I don't want to say that they're exiting because we want them to continue into levels 4 and 5. However, if they have begun French and Spanish at the junior high, then they need 2 years of a consecutive language here at FHS to meet that graduation requirement. So theoretically, after 4 years of language study, they should be at a solid intermediate mid. Unfortunately, they can keep that designation and receive the distinction at graduation in grade 12, or they can continue in their language and continue to take stamp and ALERA so that their level of benchmark would increase, and so would their level of award. The commissioner has now specified that there are only 2 levels of award, as opposed to the pilot program that we in Falmouth participated in for the past 3 years that awarded 3, the silver, the gold, and the platinum. He's decided to make it equitable with ELD to eliminate the bottom tier and just as a state award the gold and the platinum. So it's a seal of biliteracy and a seal of biliteracy with distinction. As I said in the award ceremony, we give the pins at graduation. We note that in the graduation program. I've just given Alan Kazarian the official state seal of Massachusetts to put on the diploma or the transcript. And that indicates that to colleges and employers that this student is bilingual based on an MCAS, passing MCAS score and achieving a target benchmark in the world language. So that's the essence of what teachers hope to get out of anything that PD that they avail themselves is improved instruction and ways to get students to their growth targets. Next week, I'm headed to New Orleans for the ACTFL conference, where I will be doing a presentation on intercultural competency. That is not separated from what we do in a world language. It's just bringing more awareness of students to how to deal with the differences between one culture and another. And the only way to do that is by bridging the gaps and bringing people closer together through exchange programs or any way students can interact with native speakers in any culture that is diverse or different than we are as Americans. So my session is titled Pathways to Global Leadership, because as an administrator or as a department chair, my role is how to implement these initiatives. And it's not just okay, well, today we're going to do this and tomorrow we're going to do that. It's a thoughtful process of how to not unravel, but how to roll out, this is how I'm going to, through bilingual immersion or through exchange programs or through the cultural competency, initiative I'm going to talk about in another little bit. So I'm excited to do that, and I'm excited to attend other sessions, again, that I will bring information back for teachers to use in their classrooms. This year, we also launched a Spanish exchange program. And in a little bit, you're going to see students talk about their experiences with having a host student in their home and how they interacted with them and the kinds of things that they talked about formally and informally, and about Woods Hole and the marine biologists. So I'm here today with Daisha Pina and Philip Gessen, two students who recently participated in our Falmouth High School's first ever Spanish exchange program. The high school just hosted 12 students from Spain, the Colegio Madrigal, who were here and then took a side trip to New York before they returned to Madrid. And both Daisha and Philip hosted students, and they're here to tell you a little bit about their the project that they're involved in, what kinds of things they did with their host students, and anything else they think the audience would like to know about what their trip to Spain is going to look like in April. So, welcome Daisha, welcome Philip, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So, why don't you each tell us a little bit about what it was like to be part of this exchange program?
For me, it was a really big learning moment in my life. I met some of the best friends that I'll keep for a really long time. I learned a lot about the language and learned a lot more than I could learn in a classroom. And I think it was really eye-opening to see just the different ways that our cultures combined when we were together, and how even though they're from Spain, we're so similar, but then we all have these little differences. I thought it was really interesting to me.
Yeah, you really get to know your kid. You spend 9 days with them, 24/7. You're pretty much just always around them, and so you get to know them, and you actually make some pretty strong connections. And then also when you actually hang out with a group of Spanish people, they're always speaking Spanish to each other, and you kind of have to catch up. And at the end of the actual exchange, my Spanish definitely went from down here to up here.
Yeah, it's now I can't stop. I just want to speak in Spanish every time. I just I'll be speaking and then I'll think, oh wow, I could say that in Spanish. Before I never knew how to say certain things in Spanish, and just the 2 weeks that they were here, I learned more than I have learned in this school year of Spanish.
That is awesome. That is the idea about why you're learning Spanish. Exactly right. So feel free, whenever you see me or anybody in the corridor to speak Spanish, I'd be happy to talk with you. What was the name of your host student, Daisha?
My girl's name was Miriam.
Miriam
Galan.
Yeah. And Philip.
And Gonzalo Lopez.
Yeah. And what kinds of things did you do as part of the exchange? In other words, can you talk a little bit about going to Woods Hole and going out on the boat and working with the marine biologists? And then we'll get into what kinds of things you did on the weekends and just hanging out with them informally.
Yeah, so a big part of this exchange is the fact that they live in Madrid, around Madrid. So it's a landlocked piece of land, and they haven't been out to sea that much. I think my kid's been he's visited the ocean 2 times in his life.
In Spain, in Europe.
Yeah, in Spain, in Europe. Yeah, so he's never seen anything like this.
And what was his reaction to being on a seacoast and right at the and seeing all the beaches and all the ocean and coastline?
Yeah. They're all really fascinated because it's not when you're in Madrid, it's not really you get the choice to just drive to a beach. I think a lot of us, we drove around to the beach, and even just going on the Zephyr, it was we got to go out on a boat and see what Cape Cod is like, even though it was not that warm it's summertime. But I think they all really got to know what it's like to live here and be right on the ocean, being able to have it right in your backyard.
From my experience speaking with some of them, they were so happy to be here, and they didn't really want to leave. They really liked it here and wanted to stay longer. So that's also a good sign, and that's why you're saying that you're making lifelong friends, because you will have, people to visit. Well, these students will be part of the exchange that goes to Madrid in April, but aside from that, whenever they travel outside of, the realm of, being part of a program or a school district, they'll have friends, literally all over the world, which is, a real big plus in anyone's life.
Yeah.
Like, another thing I wanted to add was they also came from like a really small school. I think they have like 50 people in their grade.
Yeah.
So when they came here during Spirit Week, when everybody's like dressing up and like really putting themselves out there. So during the pep rally, when like the entire school was like chanting and like we had the cheerleaders and stuff, a couple of the girls were like actually crying because they thought they were in a dream and that they thought they were like in an American movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
That's awesome. That must be something that's a new experience for them. They probably do not have those kinds of things in the. I believe that the Colegio Madrigal is a private school.
Yeah, and it's international.
I have no idea.
They speak like bilingual there.
Yeah,
so
I think they
it's
learn
really small.
English like as soon as they get there.
Yeah.
Like kindergarten.
Yes, most Europeans know at least 2 languages, if not 3, because they're mandated that they take them. They take a second language as part of their curricular, their studies. Anyway, so most Europeans speak English, have that as their second. And then if they're in Spain, they're either learning Spanish or Italian or French or something else. But I didn't get that far talking to them to know which language other than English they did speak if they picked up a third. But I did notice that their English was very good.
Yeah, my girl, she had been learning English since she was really young. She spoke 4 languages. So
What
she spoke English, Spanish, Arabic, and French. So she was like fluent in English. It was really amazing to me. She was so fluent in English. If any of the kids had any questions about how to say something, like me especially, if I wanted to talk in Spanish, I could ask her and she could help me, and it was amazing. I loved it. I learned so much, honestly. Yeah.
My kid wasn't like very fluent in English, like he couldn't speak English, but we still managed to somehow communicate.
Well, you spoke to him in Spanish, I'm sure. That was a help to you as a student of Spanish, and he was trying to learn more English, I'm sure, by coming here, because no matter where you are in the world, once you immerse yourself in someone else's language and culture, you automatically pick it up. Even for teachers, when we travel, it's gotten to the point for me, or it did get to the point for me, where if I landed in France, I immediately, was comfortable transitioning to French. If I landed in Spain, same thing, only in Spanish. If I landed in Italy, it was Italian. I must say, and I'm not sure I ever took a flight that landed in Germany or anywhere where German was spoken. That's one that I never studied. So for me, I know enough just to get by, and that's it. But it's the comfortableness. It's like, oh, I know what to do here when I get here. And because you hear it, you see it on signs. If you're, in your hotel room, you're got TV on with the language being spoken. You're listening to it on the radio. So the total immersion, it's like anything else. You pick up word here and there, say, oh, I remember hearing that, or I know that, or now I understand what the gist is. And, you just keep building on it. The longer you're there, the more. So them being here in the United States for 2 weeks, let's say, 9 days here, and then the rest of the time in New York, they, probably picked up new words and all kinds of things that, they didn't necessarily, because remember, they're learning English from, I don't know about a textbook, but their teachers are British, or that's usually what, and just as you're learning Spanish that's formalized. It's not until you get out into the countries where it is, in the places where it's spoken, that you really pick up the nuances and the not the slang words, but the words that are specific to different cities and different countries.
Right.
They all have their different ways of saying things. So if you're not there, if you're learning from a textbook or learning from a teacher, it's one thing, unless you have a native speaker who can, bring you through the vocabulary and things that are specific to where they're from. But so I imagine you two are looking forward to April, when you'll be going to. Neither Dacia nor Philip has traveled to Spain before, and just as the students from the Colegio Madrigal came here and were amazed by the coastline and Falmouth being beaches and everything else, they will be going to a city, capital city that's a higher altitude and smack dab in the middle of the country. And as Philip, I think, mentioned, Spain isn't landlocked, but you really, in order to get to a beach or the coastline, it'd take you at least 2 or 3 hours either way. If you're going to Valencia, that's one thing. If you're going to the south of Spain, to the Costa del Sol, that's a whole other thing. So, what kinds of things do you look forward to?
I'm excited for the food. I think the food is going to be amazing. I'm really excited to see all of the architecture because a lot of their buildings are very different from how they are here. And the way that the city is run, I think it's going to be completely different. I think here it's kind of almost not chaotic, but lots of people. I think it's going to be a different type of lots of people, completely different. I'm really excited. I've never been out of the country, so it'll be amazing.
First.
Yeah,
well, that's good.
Yeah.
What about you, Phil?
I honestly don't know what to expect, but I'm excited to go to Spain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just because Madrid is, it's, I've heard a lot of things about Madrid, like a lot of good things. So
Like what?
that we're probably not going to be there for it, but like the running of the bulls, that's in Madrid, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I would want to see like the actual people.
I'm not sure that goes on in Madrid, but that's okay.
Well, I don't know. I'm just excited to go out of the country and just go abroad.
I hope Mr. Mock and the group takes you to Botín, which is a famous restaurant in Madrid and specializes in paella and the specialties that are Spanish specialties that are customary for that area of Spain. Well, that's great. Now you guys have excursions planned. Do you know what will you be right in Spain, Madrid all the time, or you will be traveling to different parts, or do you know yet?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think for the first week we stay with the actual Spanish kids. They live in like the Spanish suburbs, in the Madrid suburbs, in a small town. It's called Waranca, and it's like, I think they have 4,000 people in it or something like that.
Yeah, it's not too big.
Yeah, and then we're gonna stay there for a week or like for half the time, and then for the rest of the half, I think we're just gonna go to Madrid, right? And we're gonna stay in a hotel and just look around.
I think we might be going to Toledo, and we're going to some museums. I forget what else we're doing, but we have a whole week's worth of stuff to do, and the first week we're going to be spending it in the classroom with the students.
That was my next question. What amount of time do you spend with your student in their actual classroom?
Yeah, the entire first week.
So actually, the week that we go is is like the Easter holiday week. So school is kind of optional, but the first 5 days we're going to be spending it with them. Most kids will go, but it's not going to be like their normal class setting because most people will go to their little villages on the coast and spend Easter there. So my Spanish exchange student, we might be going with her to where she's going for Easter.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about European teenagers. What were they like as teenagers? Were they like you, school, or were they different, or what did you trade stories about different experience? You know, just a little bit about similarities and differences.
I would say they're a lot like us, but they're a lot more open.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
They're definitely
in
like
terms of
Like,
what?
they're just really loud.
loud, loud.
Really full of energy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
when you travel in Europe and you know certain nationalities, you know, the Germans are very staid, and so are the British. When you get to the southern climes, like the Italians, the Greeks, the Spaniards, the expression is guerra guerra. They like to, you're lively,
Yeah.
you know.
It was
And
awesome.
Yeah,
It was really good.
it was.
But in terms of being like a teenager, I think that they were almost all the same as
Yeah.
like if they were to be living in America, they would fit right in. A lot of their same goals in life were the same that we had. What they wanted to do, the things that they thought were fun. A lot of it was the same, even though we're from like the opposite sides of the world. And I thought that was so interesting that even though we're so far apart and we're separated by this ocean, like we share all these common
Yeah.
things that we like to do.
That's the importance
Yeah.
of
They don't
that's
use Snapchat.
exactly. That's the importance of knowing another's culture. You get to know, you get to form relationships, you get to see similarities to yourself, and that nobody is that much different, even though you may not speak the same native language. That, you know, people are people. And did you talk to them about movies and music and the things that teenagers, you know, spend their time doing?
Music, yeah. They listen to a lot of the same stuff we do.
Oh.
So it turns out American music is
Yeah.
everywhere around the world.
Yeah.
Thanks to the internet and
Yeah.
satellite radio and all the kinds of, you know, things that social media that bring the world closer together in some aspects. As we, you know, read in the newspapers, it's not so good. But in other aspects, it's great because it brings people together and they can share the same interests and tastes in music and movies and sports.
Right.
Did you talk about sports at all?
Yeah. Well, I
Obviously,
did a little
because
bit.
they participated in a sports pep rally. So
Yeah.
did they play soccer? I'm sure, right?
My
A lot
girl
of-
didn't play soccer. She was a dancer, so we
Oh.
kind of bonded over that. I used to dance.
Oh.
But one of the girls, Grace McKnight's Spanish exchange girl, Aitana, she was amazing at football. Well, soccer.
Soccer, yeah.
Yeah.
Football.
Yeah. So she played with the Falmouth girls here on the soccer team. And a lot of the boys like soccer, so a lot of them bonded over that. They really liked that. So
Yeah.
That's great.
yeah, it was fun.
Great. Anything else you want to share or that I didn't ask, or something you want to mention that? Oh,
Not really, no.
no? All right.
No.
Well, I want to thank you for being here and for sharing your experiences, and I'm glad you had a great time with them, and we'll be excited to have you come back and talk about
Yes.
your experiences in Spain when you return in April.
Yeah.
Thank
okay.
you.
Thank you.
But those are great ways, and we have a French exchange program. Those are great ways to bring different cultures together and have students interact with their counterparts on European soil, both in France and Spain, to create better global understanding, for one thing, and to have students practice speaking the target language with one another. Europeans speak at least 2 or if not 3 languages, but it is mandated in Europe. It is not in the United States, no matter what state you live in and who has the seal of biliteracy law, as we do have the Look Act in Massachusetts. It is not anywhere mandated. So we just have to hope that our enthusiasm and our passion for teaching and learning a language translates into students who are interested and want to continue. So that brings me to my intercultural competency initiative. Luckily and fortunately for me, last year I had an idea based on some discussion with the then elementary director of curriculum, Zachary Wadaker, and a meeting that I had with the elementary principals that I would like to provide the district with some kind of intercultural competency. And I began this year with having the owners of Crêpe Cod, the Shabarbis, come, as a matter of fact, last Monday to Lawrence to talk about their background in France and in Morocco, and the importance of learning of a language and travel, and what's a francophone country. And then they mentioned a little bit about the method called a raclette, which is cheese that the French use, specific cheese that the French use in preparation for meals. Not a fondue. This is a different process. But they talked about the different types of crêpe they have at Crêpe Cod, the savory, which is meat, and the dessert, and how they're prepared, and that Friday evenings they have special parties where they do use the raclette. And they spoke French with the students, and in one classroom, the teacher created maps so students could visualize what countries they were talking about and certain expressions that they used and some songs. For example, I particularly like the French expression arms, tram, gram, pique, pique, collegram, bourre, bourre, et ratatam, arms, tram, gram. And that's the way teachers in French used to say, okay, count off by threes, or in some way try to, make selections. It serves a dual purpose because you get to practice the arms, tram, gram, the pronunciation of the French and and things like that. So it's great to hear native speakers use the language because they're, have beautiful accents, and their vocabulary is sometimes different. Magali Shabarbi comes from an island off the coast of France, in Brittany, I believe, and Monsieur Shabarbi comes from Morocco. So where foods and accents and some vocabulary are different. So it was great having them. I believe they will return in the spring sometime to do crêpe with the students at Lawrence, as they have done here. And I just think that's a fabulous way to connect with the community and bring the community into the school. Also, fortunately for me, Krista Hennessy at Lawrence sent me an email in beginning of the school year, and I believe I probably was swamped with other things, but we have reconnected over the past couple of weeks. She has now connected me to Linda Collins at the library in Falmouth, because there's a reading group that is doing Le Petit Prince. And there's also a group at a library that meets once a month, I believe, or every other month, that reads in French. So I plan on attending my first meeting tomorrow, and I was invited to attend the committee meeting for the Le Petit Prince. Ideally, I would like to have a production of Le Petit Prince put on someplace in the district, and I believe the library was interested in having, or thought that the idea of having part of this committee group read to the children in the elementaries was a great idea, which then again, there's another example of intercultural competency, the community participating in the schools and the schools welcoming the community, using those resources to provide authentic experiences and resources for students. That's another byproduct of learning a world language. We are fortunate this year, I mentioned exchanges, we are fortunate to have an exchange student for Cancun who was placed with a temporary host family and now will be spending the rest of the year, we hope, with our former superintendent, Nancy Taylor. So that is a big plus. Again, the community is participating in the work of the schools, and we're welcoming them into the schools in any way that we can. I just want to wrap up with a little bit of explanation on the portfolios that teachers are currently in the process of creating. as I mentioned before, we need to do some work here at FHS and in grade 8 at Lawrence in our meeting our target benchmark. And so by having teachers create a portfolio with IPA assessments in them, to each of interpretive, presentational, and interpersonal per term, where they've provided students with written feedback, and I give teachers feedback on their feedback, we hope to gear instruction more toward the proficiency-oriented methods. And so that translates into better outcomes on the stamp, and a LIRA possibly, although our results usually are well into the intermediate mid, and the past couple of years into the intermediate high and the advanced low, but that is the senior level. We're trying to promote the same level of proficiency for students in grade 8 whom have a certificate of attainment at their award ceremony, and grade 10 when students conceivably can exit the program, although, as I said previously, we don't want them to leave. We want them to continue. And that all leads to, as I also mentioned, the seal, which is the official document, or the official the official insignia, I guess, that's put on the diploma, the transcript, and the awarding of the pins, and I'd like to get cords for the seniors at graduation this year. So that brings me and you up to date on all world language activities that have occurred probably since I saw you last. And so until the next time, probably 2 or 3 months from now, when the next I'll have another installment of Ciao Falmouth. So for now, I'd just like to say, Ciao Falmouth.